You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always to those making us their first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you today. And on a Little Friday edition of the program, we'll be scheduling heavy. Got a couple of different things to touch on. We'll get to a swap in the non-conference portion of an upcoming football schedule and how that plays into a priority for Texas Tech football as it relates to their home schedule moving forward. But first, wanted to kick off the conversation talking about Grant McCasland and the Red Raider men's basketball team as we have the Big 12 release the details of their scheduling matrix. And I think that's a word we have to use for this now moving forward because it truly is a matrix. So we'll get into some of the hits, some of the misses, and talk about exactly what we like, maybe some of what we don't like, because obviously there are some pros and cons now that you're not in a round robin type of scenario. And obviously with some of the new additions, including the vaunted Arizona Wildcats, there may be some that you're glad to miss or glad to get, wish you would have got at home, or glad you don't have to go visit them. So if you haven't seen it, I will put it up on the screen for you to take a look at, and I'll run it down for those listening via YouTube. So this is the lay of the land, Chris. We'll talk dates and times, of course, at a later time down the road, but who the Red Raiders and Grant McCasland will be getting at home, we know, will be Colorado, Iowa State, Baylor, Central Florida, West Virginia, Arizona, Arizona State, Houston, Oklahoma State, and Texas Christian, while you will visit BYU, who does not come to Lubbock. You will visit Utah, who does not come to Lubbock. You'll visit Cincinnati, who does not come to Lubbock. You'll visit Kansas, who does not come to Lubbock. And you'll visit Kansas State, who does not come to Lubbock. The ones you'll also visit, Arizona, just like you get them at home. You'll visit Arizona State. As I mentioned, the Sun Devils do come to West Texas. You'll visit Houston, Oklahoma State, and Texas Christian. Those three also will be return dates as you'll get them at United Supermarkets Arena. So preseason projections being what they will, Chris, obviously some will rise, some will fall, maybe in an unexpected way, competitively speaking. But curious to hear what you're thinking about sort of the luck of the draw for Grant McCasland and the Red Raiders here.
Well, there's no luck here. I mean, this is an in-your-face. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. I think in some ways where people talk about how, SEC football and different, it's just different. It's so much, that's what you're looking at on paper here from a basketball standpoint. There's just nothing easy, none at all. I think your home schedule is it's good. I mean, you've got some, but what I looked at is the dynamic of you get some of the teams that are supposed to be, and again, I'm going to stress supposed to be not as good. You get them at home, so in a way it doesn't do you as much good. If you follow what I'm kind of saying there, sure. Because I think last year when you had the Jayhawks and you had Kansas State at home, that is because going to Kansas twice and not getting either one of them at home, I mean that's a boy, that's a doozy. I think. Having to go to play at West Virginia when they may be one of the teams that's not supposed to be as good. So I just looked at it from that standpoint because I looked at the totality of it. There's 20 games here. And based on nearly every outlet, your Foxes, your ESPNs, the recruiting services that do these things, your college basketball folks, that all put together the preseason top 25s, the way too early ones. There's a bunch of them out there. And they all, update as we go, as the portal, plays out, and as the NBA draft entry or declaration, all those periods of – because teams change. I mean, I think Kansas State, prime example, when they go get $2 million power forward out of Illinois that decided not to go and stay in the draft. And that was recently as a week and a half ago. And all of a sudden now they're like, okay, well, they're not in the top 25, but they are right there on the outside of it. But bottom line is you have 8 of your 20 games against what I'm going to say are preseason top 25 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't count the game in Manhattan against Kansas State. It also doesn't count, BYU's just recently picked up a couple of 5-star players that are younger, but that weren't necessarily expected to go to college. But the NBA connection that their new head coach has with, off the Phoenix Suns staff that BYU hired, able to tap into some of that. That doesn't factor into this. And so it just speaks to how difficult, and everybody's going to have something similar. There's not going to be such thing as we caught a break here and there. I mean, yeah, it's probably good you don't have to go play in Waco. It's probably good that you don't have to go play in Ames. So there's you a couple of breaks, because it's difficult to win in Ames for Texas Tech, even though you won a conference championship there 4 or 5 years ago. It's been difficult to win in Waco, although you've beaten them there, fairly recently. Whenever they were, I think, number 1 in the country, you pulled off an upset. But those are expected to be. I mean, heck, Cowan, those are supposed to be like top 5, top 7 teams in the country preseason. Those two, so it's not so bad. So those are I guess, where you catch a bit of a break. But I just look at your road games only, like where you're not going to get them at home. BYU, I've already mentioned that. That thing holds 20,000 people at the Marriott Center. It's gonna be a different, team. They've got some young talent that is as good as any talent that was incoming. The 2 trips to Kansas, extremely difficult. The trip to Cincinnati, which is a sneaky preseason top 25 team. They didn't lose anybody and added to their roster that kind of struggled down the stretch last year. I don't know a ton about Utah. That could be on paper anyway, the easier of the 2 road trips. And it's funny because you'll basically fly into Salt Lake City twice, once for BYU and once for University of Utah. So I will. I apparently Jeff Haxton and I will be well traveled next year, and then multiple trips to the state of Arizona. Flying into Phoenix one time, and then you'll fly into, I guess, Tucson in another. I'm glad that Houston gets to come here. I think that is because the home there, the trip down there is going to be extremely difficult. We know the opposing team's field goal percentage from last year. Largely that entire team is back, minus Jamal Shed, and then they added Milo Suzan to replace him. But then after that, everything is largely the same, and the same really good head coach is still there. So anyway, I just those are kind of my initial thoughts to it. I don't know what your opinions were, but it's kind of an in-your-face look at, like, dang, this league is good.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start putting pen to paper and you start thinking about the miles that you're gonna travel and all those things, it's a brutal schedule. But I think everybody's got that. And if you're looking at it, odds are 4 games over 500 in the with your conference record like you had last year when you had an 11-7 record. Extremely difficult to achieve that this year, but we'll see kind of what it looks like, and there'll be some things that we don't know. But everybody loaded up again, and the coaches there's some new coaches, but there's a lot of quality coach. I mean, so it's just it is absolutely bar none the best basketball league that there is in college right now, and it's maintained that. And I know UConn has won some championships lately, but top to bottom, there's just not really a close comparison.
Well, and I think that a lot of Texas Tech fans, and based on some national perception as well, would like to make a certain argument, that argument being First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite events again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals. And I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. And of course, it's always at the lowest price, guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that last beer at the tailgate at your own pace, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. They give you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast and easy, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. I think that a lot of Texas Tech fans, and based on some national perception as well, would like to make a certain argument, that argument being the Red Raiders have loaded up. Because some of the work that you've done this offseason, some of the work that you've done in the transfer portal, kind of depends on what maybe outlet you're looking at. But I've seen Texas Tech ranked within a top 15, a top 10 as far as the transfer class that was put together. So hopefully you'll be there lockstep with even a better opportunity. I know the odds may be a little bit longer as far as the competition is concerned for maybe what you could put up record-wise. But I don't know how you feel, and it's impossible to know, obviously, till we get there. Because you got to bring this team together and establish some chemistry, clearly. But I'm feeling like Texas Tech is going to have also a better chance to be a better team this year. Now, whether or not that shows up in the win-loss column because of what you are facing within this conference and some of the new additions bringing some new challenges, I don't know. But I'm having hopes this offseason as a Tech basketball fan that you have put together a quality roster, and maybe even because of some health luck that maybe you didn't have last year with guys like Devin Cambridge, that you have a chance to be a better team, just purely, talent-wise, athlete, personnel-wise, this year than you were a season ago. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's because the reason that this schedule is different than the rest of them that you've done is that there's an extra two games on here that, weren't previously on here. So you try to figure out, what the benchmark will be. Do you need to be 10-10 or better? Do you need to be 9-11? Can you be 8-12 and still get in? And certainly when you start talking about if you're 10-10 or better, you would think, boy, you have a really good chance to get to the tournament. But that's where this one is just a bit trickier, because there's two more brutal games on here, which is great for fans. It's one more conference home game. It's one more conference road game. It basically lets, it ensures that everybody sees everybody on this deal. I don't know exactly the rhyme or reason on how they did the matrix, to use your term, on the home and away, how that got to be, because I think it's fun that you have a home and home with Arizona. I've broadcast a game at University of Arizona several years ago. It's not.
Have you? When was that?
Yeah, that would have been when Tubby was the coach.
Okay.
We had, I've ironically enough, I've been to Arizona State as well, in Tempe for football and basketball, and obviously for football and basketball for University of Arizona. So that's it's not a far. I mean, it's far easier to get to Tucson or Tempe than it is to Morgantown. That it's not that big of a hike. It's just unfamiliar in some ways, but I do want to point out that that you've played them in basketball there in both of them in recent years. I would say in the last 7 to 8 years, I guess. But I think when Tubby was here, we were in Tempe right before Christmas one time, and we played the University of Arizona. I think I want to say that was one of those December games as well. And it's not, maybe the conference version of this will be much more difficult, but I wouldn't say that playing at Arizona, typically when you play against Arizona, it's not because of their crowd that is a problem. It's because they usually have a really good coach,
right.
Or I saw, the NBA draft, going on this week. I think they have the 7th or 8th most first round draft picks over the last however much, 10 or 15 years.
Is that right? I really don't. I kind of feel like from a team perspective, they've been good. I don't know that they've been as good as historically the program would justify, but I guess the talent's still been there.
It's blue blood ish. I don't know if it's true blue blood. I mean, I think, and what's, I don't know, we're spending a lot of time on Arizona, but that's the one that sticks out on the home and home.
Yeah.
That is new. It doesn't surprise me that you're playing a home and home with Houston. You didn't get them here last year, proximity and all that stuff. But the two Arizona schools is kind of an interesting way to lump you in. But it's proximity wise, they are closer than most of these schools are to you. And so that part made sense to me. But, Arizona, when you go, if you ever have been to Tucson, the first time I rolled in for football and then obviously basketball, I thought to myself, Lute Olson deserves a lot more credit because he's the one that really turned that program into that blue blood type program and was there for years and years and years, national championships and all the success that they had, because it's the desert and it's not this unbelievable, awesome college town. It's, it's not that it's ugly or anything. It's just, you're kind of out in the desert. There's an institutional feel to Tucson compared to some of the other college places that you go to. Whereas Tempe, their biggest problem is I'd get in a lot of trouble there because it's just, there's a lot to look at. The sun is shining, and it's an extension of Phoenix. You don't really know when you leave Phoenix and enter Tempe. It's all kind of connected.
Right.
And so it's probably hard to get, folks paying attention to college athletics at that time when you've got all the pro sports and just big city and all that kind of stuff. So, and maybe that's what Arizona's advantage is. It's like, hey, we are a college town because that's all there is to do here. But that's the Arizona home and homes, in the Arizona State, the two trips there. That I thought that was kind of fascinating as far as the schedule goes.
Yeah, obviously, I didn't mean to get us off into Arizona Wildcat breakdown, but Arizona is the most intriguing of the new additions from a basketball standpoint by far.
And Grant just spent what 3 weeks with their head coach as part of the Olympics deal.
Yeah, with Tommy Lloyd.
Correct. Yeah, right? He was the head coach, and Grant was an assistant, and so they've known each other for years. And I think that is kind of another layer to this particular conversation as well.
As far as the schedule in general, whether it's football, basketball, tiddlywinks, whatever it is, I'm always wanting all the in-state matchups. So I would like to go to Waco. I'd like to play all of the in-state foes twice every time around. I'm glad that Houston is going to be in the LBK this year. Obviously, not getting Kansas at home takes away a premier game that traditionally you had. Of course, I didn't miss not going to Kansas a season ago, but you will be obviously going to Lawrence, so that'll be a big challenge. But I would love to have those in-state foes twice every time around. I know that's not necessarily the way it works, but I think from an away standpoint, when you're not necessarily focused in on, say, Arizona or Houston or Kansas, there's quite a bit of opportunity there. And like you're talking about in the Big 12 conference, I mean, every night's going to be a fist fight. So it's not like you're feeling all that lucky to get anybody here or there, or like you're dodging bullets or whatever. But I like some of the opportunity that you got as far as the road chances are concerned. And I'm excited to get back to it, man. This league only gets tougher. And I do kind of wonder, now that you're at a 20-game schedule, how that impacts you come tournament selection time, or how that impacts your performance in the tournament whenever it does actually begin. We've gotten kind of used to, over the years, I guess, maybe what a conference record would need to look like most years to sort of be tournament worthy. And now I kind of wonder maybe how that might evolve a little bit, and sort of where the standard is, I guess, as far as a league record.
Well, get used to most of this schedule being like, well, they're all quad one games kind of type territory, and that's your net, your RPI, your schedule strength, all the metrics and data should just be, off the charts good. You would think. And what's most interesting to me is trying to figure out who won't be any good. That's
Right.
that's the one that is, because I mean you look at it. Okay, I don't know a ton about Utah, but they're going to be kind of Colorado has had a lot of recent success. I mean, Tad Boyle's taken the Buffaloes to the tournament several times in the last 4 to 6 or 7 years. They've been to the tournament. I think UCF was. We saw them twice last year, like 2 weeks apart. This was a team that wasn't an NCAA tournament team, and yet there you kind of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say you got embarrassed, and you were shorthanded a bit. No Warren and no Chance McMillan that game. Or Warren, actually, that was the game that he tried to play for about 8 minutes, and then they just kind of overwhelmed you. But these are going to be the teams that are kind of middle of the pack, or not supposed to be great. And I've seen the kind of athlete that they're trying out there, and I'm thinking like, well, if this is like the middle of the pack or not very good tier of team, like it just speaks to how brutal the league is. Arizona State's also a team that I'm not super familiar with. That they've struggled in recent years, but it just speaks to which makes it fun, man. It makes it fun.
Sure.
Extremely relevant night in and night out. That's what I'll get a kick out of, because I think that for all that you're fighting for from a football standpoint, relevancy and the hatred and the legitimacy and all that, basketball has it in spades. I mean, it's overflowing with relevancy. Your relevancy bucket is just spilling out all over the floor.
Yeah. Well, it's just around the corner. We'll be here before we know it. Can't wait to get back to United Supermarkets Arena. Of course, we're getting back first to the Jones, and that's where I want to finish our conversation today as we look ahead to some future non-conference scheduling. Might have seen the news recently that Texas Tech has made a swap. A road trip to Colorado State is out. A home visit by Kent State, is in. This is going down in 2025. And I suppose, Chris, it is rooted in a larger priority as far as Texas Tech wanting to secure themselves 7 home games every season. So is it really based in anything beyond that, or is that almost entirely the motivation to make the change?
So we stayed in Fort Collins last year for 2 days, basically, before that Wyoming game. That's where we were based, because it's 45 minutes away to Laramie, and that's just where a lot of teams stay. And I remember and Fort Collins is super nice, but it's a ways out there. It's on the other side of Denver and all those things. And I remember coming back last fall, and we've obviously lamented the Wyoming trip was an ugly one. And I'm thinking, like, I said something to somebody a couple weeks after that trip, about Fort Collins, and there had just been a Board of Regents meeting, and they were like, "Yeah, we're getting out of that one." I'm like, "Really? I kind of like Fort Collins, but I get it." and the Regents, I think, just feel like. And people that put money into this south end zone, it needs to pay for itself. And they've made a fundamental change to where they're gonna do everything that they can to ensure that there's 7 home games there every year. I don't know if it will always work that way. I don't think you're interested in neutral site stuff. I think you're going to make sure that you get 2 or 3 non-conference games, because there are going to be some of these conference schedules where you have the 4 and the 5 kind of rotation, and that would ensure every non-conference game is at home on the years when you get the 4. And so that's a bit tricky, but I think there's just a fundamental decision was made with trying to take care of your fan base, trying to improve your record, trying to pay for this thing, trying to make it worthwhile that we built this thing. Let's put as much in there as we possibly can. And so Colorado State was the kind of the first, I don't know, victim. And Tech paid a penalty there to get out of that deal. And I'll also tell you that was you set that deal up because that was Joe Parker, who was right under Kirby here for years. He was the AD there, and he's no longer the AD there anymore. And so you don't feel, I don't know, as obligated, like, okay, I'm not wanting to hose you or whatever. But yeah, so I think that's really what, to sum it up, I guess Kent State comes in here and Colorado State does not, or you're not going to. And plus, maybe you have PTSD from staying in Fort Collins from the Wyoming trip and like don't want to do that again. To which I say, I don't have any problem with that, wiping that bad memory away. I don't want to repeat it for sure.
Yeah, curious to see how these schedules will evolve in some coming years as far as the non-conference goes. You got obviously a trip to Washington State coming up this season. North Texas is coming to your house. You're scheduled to have a return North Texas trip in 2027. Will that one remain? Maybe a little bit more intriguing given its proximity to the Metroplex. I don't know, or it may not be intriguing at all, something they want to get out of as well. So next year, 26. No, 25. You will have those three in the LBK, Arkansas, Pine Bluff scheduled, Kent State, and Oregon State coming to West Texas. Looking ahead to 2026, I'm seeing Abilene Christian and a return trip to Corvallis, Oregon to take on the Beavers. I haven't seen a third game listed unless I've just missed it. Do you know of a third potential opponent?
No, it'll be a home game. I can tell you that. It will be a home game. That's the tricky part about the non-conference Power 4 matchups is that you're not getting the Washington States, the Oregon States. List them off. The Arkansas that we've seen, the Arizona States, I mean, all those things that you've had, those are always going to have to be home and homes. That's just the way that's going to go. And so you're the years where you want to try to have all your home games at home need to fall on those years where you're going to be the host of the home and home. So that's the tricky puzzle piece that you're trying to put together to where, okay, we can go to Washington State in a year where we have the 5 conference home games, and next year you're going to get the one less conference home game, but now we're going to get Oregon State at home. So that's the tricky part about matching all that up. And that's assuming this league stays like it is right now.
That's very true.
I mean,
that's a good point.
And does the playoff expand? There's all those dynamics that you're not real sure about too, because these schedules are put together. There's some of this stuff out into the 2031 and 32 range that you've already got established. It's always good to see that contract and kind of see the fine print. Like, hey, can we get out of this? What's it cost us?
I think you do have the aforementioned Arkansas Razorbacks on the schedule, like going into 2030, and we'll see if that.
And then you end up getting into a situation. Now, this is the basketball part, but hey, Wyoming, we'd like to hire your former head coach to be an assistant for us.
Right.
You do, huh? Okay. Well, he's going to owe us some money. How about if we work out some scheduling stuff and let's put some games on paper? We'll come to you. Remember that whole deal was wild. And so there's just all those dynamics. Or you get called on Thanksgiving week and the Ducks say, hey, we really want to play the Beavers. We need some cooperation. Okay. And then that thing got changed on a whim, like less than a year out, and you're got Washington State on your schedule. So you just never know what's around the corner. But fundamentally, 7 home games is the preference from the people that matter.
Well, and something you kind of mentioned in passing, but is scratching me where I itch, is a move away from neutral site kind of interests. I've never been a real big fan of those. If you were going to do it, I certainly preferred it was going to be a non-conference matchup. But in general, and not that I care about opposing, college towns receiving anything out of it, but I want Lubbock receiving as much as they can through the season. So I would consider that a good thing if that actually is something that's going to continue to be that way.
The only way I see you doing that is if that were to take the place of when you were going to go do one of these road games in the non-conference. Gotcha. If you're like, okay, well, our neutral site will that'll be that.
Yeah.
But that would almost take a 2-year agreement in some ways, because with all these home and homes that you've got with these Power 4 teams, off into the sunset for many years to come. So anyway, there's just a lot of dynamics, a lot of things at play. But yeah, that open slot next year, you can just bet your bottom dollar home game. It would be my strong suggestion.
And maybe since you've got a visit to someone like, what was it, Oregon State, I think, you're going to be talking about a kind of a group of 5 category or something like that, but we'll see what comes to fruition there. All right, a lot of good stuff. Appreciate the insight and perspective there. As always, Chris, enjoyed it, and we'll see you back for the next round.
Happy Thursday, people. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us. As always, get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And, of course, the best way to help us grow the show is to comment anything below on YouTube. So thanks to those who do that. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.